All right, we did unlock the real credits. That's awesome. All right, here, first things first. The bottom center of the screen says that we have beaten 95 games this year and 417 since we started doing this in 2020. Those numbers are now incorrect. We've now beaten 96 games in 2023 and 418 since we started doing this almost 4 years ago. Holy shit. No, that's not right. Holy shit, that is right. Okay, alright, whatever. That's fine. So here's the deal. Most games that I start playing, I go in pretty fresh. I am very good at avoiding spoilers, even avoiding trailers for games that I know I want to play. Obviously, this is a game that since I heard about it, I knew I wanted to play it. But I wanted to play them in order, so I played all of the God of Wars before this one. And unfortunately, with this kind of game, you can't, if you're on the internet, you can't avoid everything. However, I did avoid almost everything, but the main thing that I was not able to avoid is that I know that a lot of people think this is like the best video game of all time or the best video game of the last 10 years. You know, that it is regarded as one of the absolute best video games of all time. I was not able to avoid that, you know, information. So, because of that, I went into it with pretty high expectations. Like, I just went in expecting it to be one of the best video games of all time. And so because of that, unfortunately, it did have an effect on the way I felt about the game, because anything less than perfection is a disappointment, right? So I would have liked to have just played this game not having heard anything about it and just going to and be like, oh my, and I would have been like this. I would have been like, oh my god, this game is amazing, like everybody else did when it first came out, right? I was not able to have that experience. And so, for the first half of the game, plus, it was really more about just finding faults, finding, you know, the fact that it looked so good, that it played so good, that the story was so great, that it was so really amazing on every level, was what I expected, and so it did not impress me. However, eventually, I started coming around to the feeling it really actually didn't happen until the very end. The last couple of chapters, I started to actually feel like, oh my god, yeah, this game is incredible. And I did feel that it was amazing all the way through. It's just, I expected that, and so it didn't really wow me. But there are a couple of things working against this game. One, I've already explained that I went into it with really high expectations. Another is that it's not in a genre that I would say is like one of my favorite genres, you know? It's not, it doesn't have a horror bend. I would have liked it a lot more probably if it had that. Alright, well, that's not correct. I generally like those games more, you know, so this isn't going to rank as high as something like Resident Evil 4 Remake, because that was a masterpiece too, but it's a horror game, and I just love that kind of survival horror, resource management, jump scares, that kind of action horror kind of game. And it's, you know, it's not a Souls-like, and it's not one of those like 3 or 4 like genres that I like always love, no matter what. Loot shooters is on that list too. But in spite of all that, I did love it. I loved it. I did. And you know, I enjoyed, I mean, the combat was pristine. The story is it the best story in any video game ever? It's up there. It's got to be top 5. I mean, that's one thing that is, you could say whatever you want about how much you love retro games. One area that you are never going to win an argument is that The games that have come out in the last 7 or 8 years are the best. They have the best stories. Well, let me rephrase that. The top 50 best stories in any video game of all time, at least 40 of them have come out in the games in the last, because the technology just is a better vehicle for that kind of a thing now. You wouldn't have been able to have a story like this on Atari, or Nintendo. Not really. Not to that effect, not to that cinematic level, So, is this story the best video game story of all time? The Last of Us comes up. Both of them, 1 and 2, I think, both have arguments. I think of like a game like Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, but I don't think that's quite as good story-wise as this. That's the only thing that really comes into my mind that might be better is the Last of Us games, story. It is. I've heard Red Dead 2 has a great story. Red Dead 1 had a great story, but not as good as this. So I mean, the story is top tier, god tier, pardon the phrase. I mean, there's no beating that. The combat was amazing. The RPG elements, like the levels, upgrades, XP, resource, currency, that kind of stuff, I actually thought that was maybe my biggest critique from an objective point of view. We've already talked about how it's not going to necessarily rank number 1 because I already expect it to be good. It's not exactly my genre, exactly kind of thing. But those are not objective things. Those are my preference things. As from an objective standpoint, there are only 2 things that I can think of that I ever really had a problem with. One, the big one, is that I thought all of the upgrade options and elements were a little bit muddy. They kind of threw everything at you all at once, so you can upgrade Kratos' equipment, you can upgrade Atreus' equipment, you can upgrade you can put enchantments, you can upgrade those enchantments, you can upgrade you have separate skill trees, you have skill trees for each weapon, you have gear that can be crafted, bought, sold, upgraded. It actually kind of felt a little muddy to me. It felt like a lot that was thrown all at once, and so I ended up just ignoring a lot of it for the first half of the game because I didn't really need it. It was I played on normal, and so the game wasn't that hard really at any point. I had one fight that really was difficult toward the later parts of the game, and it wasn't the final boss. Final boss didn't kill me, actually. Well, he kind of did, but he had that resurrection stone. Yeah, you get it. So I actually thought that was that would be an objective critique. I thought if they could streamline that a little bit, make it simpler. Like, do I really need to be able to spend XP to upgrade enchantments? Is that really important? Oh, well, actually, no. It wasn't upgrading enchantments. See, I still don't have it straight. It's not upgrading enchantments. It's upgrading gear. There was a lot in there, and I never really quite understood it. And you know what? Hey, I'll admit it. Maybe that was a me problem. If this was a game that I was one of those gamers that would sit and spend 80 hours just playing every little thing in this game, I'm sure it'd have a perfect handle on it. But at the beginning of the game, especially playing at the speed that I do, I didn't understand all of it. And it's not just about not understanding. It was also like, well, it's always going to be a bad idea to spend money or money on hack silver on upgrades of gear because the upgrades aren't that good. So you might as well just save your hack silver for different pieces of gear entirely, or enchantments, or other things, or other things that you can upgrades on your weapons and stuff that you can spend hack silver on. So it's just like, does upgrading equipment even need to be in this game if it's not that good? I only did it right at the very end because I just had hack silver to spare and I knew I was about to beat the game. So there was a lot of that, and it's not just there was a lot of it. It was also some of it just didn't seem like it was that good, So why is it even in the game? So that would be my one of 2 objective complaints. Although this is, as I'm sure you can tell, this is extremely nitpicky. I mean, almost everything about this game was perfect. Right, but I did have a little bit of an issue with that. The second thing is, and this is really even more nitpicky, is I don't think I didn't like the ledge traversal. The way they did the ledge traversal, where you had to be looking right at the ledge for the prompt to appear, was confusing at first for a while, and then when I got the hang of it, it was tiresome having to move the camera around. There are plenty of other games with ledge traversal that have figured that out, that you don't have to do all that, and it's much more seamless. So I didn't love that. Good on them for trying something different, but you don't need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to ledge traversal. People have already pretty much mastered that. You know, if it was a new fun way to do ledge traversal, fine, but there was nothing really fun about the ledge traversal in this game. It was just tedious. But it's not like Uncharted or something like that where there's like constant ledge traversal. So it didn't come up that often. It wasn't that big of a deal. It was fine. Really, other than those two things, I mean, the game was perfect. And I'm sure I would get pushback on even those things, you know, especially the RPG elements. For some people, that's probably the perfect amount of upgrades and whatever. So, obviously, all in all, perfect game. I'm really not dreading making a review video for this game, because what can I say about this game positive wise that hasn't already been said, and B, how do I dare say anything negative about this game? I don't want to get railed on the internet. I mean, it's fine. I can handle it. But I mean, it's not. This game is probably not going to rank in the top 10 for me, where a lot of people probably would. And all of the reasons that I've discussed just now are why. It's not, you know, it's not squarely in my wheelhouse. And really, just like a lot of other games, I did not play this game the way that it was designed to be played. This game was designed to be lived in for a long time, and I didn't do that. I didn't touch any of the side content. I didn't do any of the Valkyrie stuff. I didn't do any of the extra realms. I did none of that. But I will say this. There are other games like Horizon Zero Dawn and Ghost of Tsushima that are in my top 10 that are also designed to be lived that way, and I would say I enjoyed both of those games better than this one. Not story-wise. I think this game probably has a better story than those two, although Zero Dawn might be close. But because the actual combat in both of those games, I think I enjoyed a little bit more. Is that true? Yeah, I think, especially Ghost of Tsushima, I think the combat was just super, super fun. It was just a little bit more varied. This had very God of War, surprisingly God of War-ish combat, for being a totally different take on the genre, but it wasn't quite as varied as something like Zero Dawn or Ghost of Tsushima, or Deep. Ghost of Tsushima isn't as varied, maybe. Anyway, I'm rambling a little bit now, but overall, awesome game. Awesome, perfect, almost. And, you know, it is going to rank in the top 50, I imagine. And I, especially the story toward the end, really, as a father, it did kind of hit a little differently right toward the end. So I appreciated that. The game's never really done that to me before, not even The Last of Us. So kudos to it for that. But yeah, all in all, just as expected, an amazing experience. Okay. Well, last order of business, God of War, it has been a pleasure. I'm glad I finally got around to playing you, but we are now going to delete you from our console and never play you again. Bye! Alright, that's it for God of War.